Snow fell like breath from a ghost, slow, soundless, sorrowful. It came down in sheets, gentle as lace, cruel as ash. The mountains swallowed the sound of horses and footfall, muffled the voices of the men guiding wagons through narrow trails, turned the living into shadows under white. In the pale hush of a Wyoming winter, Eleanor Vale rode beside her husband, cloak drawn tight, gloves worn through at the fingertips. Her cheeks were raw with wind, her thoughts quieter than prayer. She had married for a promise, not of love, but of safety. That was what he'd offered in Boston. John Vale, with his lawman's coat and silver pocket watch, the kind of man who said the right things to people who mattered. He had promised her land and steadiness and a future shaped with calm hands. And she had said yes, because sometimes silence felt heavier than hope. Now, 6 weeks into the wild, his promises weighed like snow in her lungs. The wagon creaked behind them, the canvas already crusted in frost. One mule had frozen the night before, breath hardening in its lungs before dawn could touch it. The men buried it without ceremony. Everything was like that now, efficient, wordless. The kind of quiet born when people start thinking more about getting through than getting there. John rode ahead, never looking back. Eleanor learned to stop waiting for the glance. Then came the sound, or the absence of one, a stillness so sharp it rang. And then, the mountain moved. She didn't see it at first, only felt it. A shift beneath the snow, like something deep below had rolled over in its sleep. The men stopped. Heads turned. Somewhere, someone shouted. The shout didn't matter. The avalanche did. It came from the ridge above, a wall of white, rushing down as if the sky itself had fallen. Eleanor's horse reared. She screamed, but didn't hear it. Snow devoured sound. Time became heartbeat. She saw John's back, the flash of him kicking his horse hard, riding away, not toward her. He left her. The weight hit like a flood. Cold, endless, rolling. She couldn't run, couldn't move. She was taken. The world became white and breathless. When she woke, it was to a silence even deeper. A pressing hush, like being held under water. Snow touched her lips. Ice clung to her lashes. She was buried but alive. Trapped in a cocoon of cold, curled in on herself. Her gloves were gone. Fingers burned, then dulled. She could not scream. The snow had taken that too. She moved one hand, then the other, inch by inch. Her body rebelled, bones howling. Her lungs caught sharp air. She dug upward, blindly. Her nails cracked. One boot was missing. Somewhere above her, light cracked through. She clawed toward it. She broke through snow like being born. The sky was dark, storms still drifting in waves. The wagons were gone. The trail erased. The others, buried or scattered. No fire. No voice. John was not there. She laughed once. It came out like a sob. The wind pushed against her, mean as a slap. Her cloak hung in rags. One leg throbbed with a heat that meant something inside had torn. Still she stood. She walked. There were no trails. No signs. Only white, unending. Time stopped meaning anything. Hunger turned dull. Cold became her skin. The sky began to blur. Shapes flickered in the corners, wolves or ghosts or memory. It was near nightfall when she found the cave. Low and narrow, half hidden beneath a rise of snow-draped stone, its mouth dark as a promise. She fell into it more than entered, sliding down a slope of ice, her body too tired to care. It was warm. Not warm like fire. Warm like fur, like breath, like being inside the lungs of something old and sleeping. And something was there. She saw eyes first. Yellow. Still. Watching. Wolves. A she-wolf curled near the back, her body curled around 2 cubs. They did not growl. Did not move. Just watched. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She did not scream. Could not. She should have died there. But something, perhaps the storm, perhaps the beast, spared her. The she-wolf blinked slowly, like a woman considering, then turned her head away. Eleanor crawled to the far edge of the den and lay still, every part of her shaking. Her limbs didn't belong to her anymore. Her heart had slowed. She thought she might finally sleep and not wake. But she did wake. Again and again. She watched them. The wolves were quiet. The mother rarely moved. The cubs nursed, then slept. Once, the she-wolf left, returning with blood on her muzzle. Eleanor did not eat what was left. Not then. But on the 3rd night, when her stomach gnawed at itself, she crawled toward a half-gnawed bone and chewed. Not with dignity. with desperation. It hurt. She cried when she swallowed. The she-wolf watched. Eleanor began to understand the rules. Stay low. Stay quiet. Show no teeth. Move slow. She mimicked the cubs, curling beside the wall, breathing steady, keeping her eyes low. Days passed. She did not count them, only felt them in her bones. When the storm lifted, she went outside for snowmelt, drank from her cupped hands, washed her face. Her lips split, bled. She wrapped her feet in her torn cloak, rewrapped it nightly until only threads remained. Once, the she-wolf came beside her and lay down, her side rising slow and steady. Not touching, just near. Eleanor whispered then. Not words, just sound. Gratitude. One cub died. The smaller one. It had grown weak. Eleanor woke to find it still, the mother licking its side without urgency. She sat beside them for hours, not moving. When night came, the mother took the body outside. Eleanor watched the snow reclaim it. It was the first time she cried without shaking. She remembered the wedding. The Boston hall with candles in the chandeliers. John smiling with a mouth that never reached his eyes. She remembered the way he'd introduced her at parties, never as Eleanor, only as my wife. He had not looked back. She thought of him under the snow. Or worse, alive and warm by someone else's fire, retelling the story of how she was lost. She took off the ring that night. It had grown loose on her finger. Her hands were bone now. She held it in her palm until the metal felt warm. Then she buried it just outside the cave, pressing it deep into the snow. She watched the sky. Something stirred inside her, not rage. Not yet, but a hunger. Not for food, for voice, for return. When she crawled back inside the cave, the wolf looked at her as though she had passed some unspoken test. There was no triumph, only survival, the kind that changes your name, even if no one else hears it. Outside, the wind was rising again. Inside, breath rose and fell. Somewhere far from there, someone else had begun walking through the snow, following footprints. But Eleanor did not know that yet. She only knew this. The mountain had taken everything. And yet somehow, she was still here. The snow carried secrets the way rivers carried stones, slow, unseen, but always moving. Wyapi knelt near the edge of a ridgeline, the wind combing his braids back from his face. He placed his hand into the print again, not a wolf's, not a man's. A strange thing. A barefoot track, light and raw, pressed shallow into crusted snow beside a familiar trail of paws. He closed his eyes and listened. The mountain spoke in whispers, not words. But to those who walked long enough alone, whispers could be enough. He had lived with silence for 3 winters now. Since the war, since the valley burned, since the white men with their rifles and shiny buttons came to call peace by name and still bury his kin. Wyapi did not pray anymore. But he listened. The track turned east, bending through a glade of black pines. He rose and followed it. No birds sang. Not in that place. Only snow dripping in soft pulses from bowed branches, falling with the hush of a dying breath. He moved like mist, lean, deliberate, quieter than frost. His bow was slung over one shoulder, untouched. His knife rested near the curve of his ribs. But he hunted nothing. Not yet. He did not know her name. Only that something, someone, walked with the wolves. Not behind them. Not fleeing. Moving alongside. Like kin. Like ghost. By the 3rd day, he found blood. Not fresh. Dark, crusted, woven into pine needles. And near it, an old scrap of wool, once red, now the color of dried clay. Torn fabric, thin enough to see through, curled like a dead leaf in the snow. He held it between his fingers and frowned. The thread was stitched by hand, small, even, practiced. Not a man's. Not wild. A woman's. Wyapi had seen many things. He had watched white women die in childbirth, in blizzards, by bandits. He had seen them in wagons, thin-shouldered and sun-blind, speaking soft behind handkerchiefs. None of them walked barefoot beside wolves. He did not understand it. But he followed. Each night, he built no fire, ate cold meat, slept with the earth at his back. The prints were days old, but the wolves stayed close to one region. There was rhythm in their pattern, hunting, returning, sheltering. Something held them here. The mountains could be cruel, yes, but they could also remember. This one did. By the 6th day, he found the cave. It lay low against a bluff of broken stone, disguised by drifts and shadow. The entrance was narrow, almost too narrow for a man, but wolf prints fanned from it like sun rays. He did not enter. Instead, he knelt and left his offering. A length of smoked fish, wrapped in birch bark. A blanket of woven deer hair, soft, dark, still warm from his fire 2 nights past. He left them just outside, not close, not far. Then he stepped back into the trees and waited. Time passed like snow falling, slow, soundless, steady. He did not see her come out. But when he returned the next morning, the blanket was gone. The fish too. In their place, a single boot print. Still barefoot. Still moving. She was alive. He did not smile. But something inside him eased. He trailed her from distance after that. Never close enough to be seen. Just enough to ensure the wind had not stolen her bones. Her path zigzagged oddly, careful, halting, like someone remembering how to be human. She stopped at creeks and did not drink right away. She touched bark like it meant something. He once saw her lean against a pine and cry. He turned away then. That moment was not his to hold. The wolves remained close. They did not circle her. They walked beside. This was no wildling girl. This was someone born twice. He began to leave things for her. Not daily, that would frighten her. She was already on the edge, like ice waiting to crack. But enough. A wooden bowl of crushed berries tucked beneath a hollow. A comb, carved from elk bone. A necklace made of polished river stone, laid atop moss, no string, just the stones, placed carefully. Each time, she accepted. She never left messages. Except once. He found a piece of bark, laid gently atop a boulder near the stream. Carved into it with some sharp thing, perhaps her fingernail, a single image. A wolf and a woman, side by side. No names. No sun. Just the outline, simple and still. Waiapi held the bark in his hand and felt a thing stir in his chest that had not moved in years. Not since the valley. Not since his sister's voice was silenced by flame and treaty. This woman, she was not asking for help. She was surviving. But survival had its limits. The storm returned on the 12th night. Winds howled through the ridge, dragging trees like skirts behind them. The temperature fell like a blade. Even the wolves took shelter, vanishing into caves and hollows. Waiapi knew what that cold could do. He had lost friends to it. Fingers. Sleep. He did not wait. He climbed the ridge with snow burning his lungs, moved toward the place where he knew she last wandered. No tracks remained. Only memory. He followed instinct. When he found her, she was half buried in snow, knees curled, arms tucked beneath her neck. Not dead. Not yet. He lifted her gently. She did not wake. Her skin was pale enough to be mistaken for the snow she slept in. Her breath came shallow. Her eyes fluttered once, then closed. She weighed nothing. He brought her back to his shelter, deep in the pine valley. A place carved from rock and cedar, hidden with brush and silence. It smelled of pine tar and old fire. He did not speak. He laid her near the coals, covered her with furs, placed warmed stones beside her ribs. She did not stir for a full day. When she finally woke, it was not with panic. Only a quiet question in her eyes, as if unsure whether this, too, was a dream. He met her gaze, said nothing. She blinked slowly, then looked away. That night, he made broth from elk and herbs. She sipped it slowly, with both hands, like it might be taken away. She did not speak, but when he turned to leave, she caught the edge of his sleeve. A small touch, a whisper of trust. He nodded once, then sat again by the fire. Still, silent, near. The wolves howled outside sometime before dawn. She did not flinch. Waiapi watched her face, saw the way her jaw set, not in fear, but in remembrance. He did not ask what she had lost. He knew that asking meant prying at wounds that only just scabbed. She would speak when she was ready, if she ever was. Until then, he would wait. Not as savior, not as captor, but as someone who had once needed the same kind of quiet. And found it, not in people, but in presence. Somewhere beyond the trees, the world that had left her for dead still turned. But here, between the snow and the firelight, something ancient had paused to breathe again. And it was not finished speaking. The fire in Waiapi's shelter did not roar. It breathed, low, patient, and warm, like a hand resting over a heartbeat, not pressing, just being there. Eleanor sat near it, legs drawn under the blanket he had wrapped her in, watching the orange light dance across the bones of her hands. They no longer looked like hers, thinner, rougher, as though carved from the mountain itself. She did not speak. Not yet. The words were somewhere behind her ribs, slow to rise. Wyapi sat across from her, his back to the wall, sharpening a piece of flint with a steady rhythm. His presence did not fill the space, it shared it. He did not watch her, but she felt his awareness, quiet and steady as snowfall. He was not a man of many movements, and that made every small act matter more. She tried once to thank him. The word caught in her throat like a splinter. She gave up on speaking and let silence carry what she couldn't say. He seemed to understand. In this place, language was something older than words. Each day, the light grew longer outside, and the shadows moved more gently across the snow. The wolves came often, their prints at the edge of the glade each morning. Eleanor would watch them from the doorway. Sometimes the she-wolf stood, distant but still, a ghost that had once held her. A sentinel. They did not approach, but they were never far. She began to walk again, slow and unsure, but stronger with each day. Her leg, once swollen and purple, now bent without splitting her breath. Wyapi gave her tasks, not commands, never orders. Just quiet invitations. He would hand her a small bundle of herbs, then step away, and she would crush them. Or he would leave a strip of hide near her place, and she would cut it into cords. It was not work. It was remembering. She had been useful once. Before John. Before the silence that had blanketed her long before the avalanche did. Now, her hands moved with purpose again, even if they still trembled. One night, as the fire flickered low, she watched him carve a piece of wood with the careful attention of someone coaxing out a hidden truth. It was a figure, not human, not beast. Something in between. She leaned forward. Her voice was soft and unused, like an old violin string. Who is that? Wyapi didn't look up. He is the one who watches the crossroads. Her brow furrowed. A spirit? A guide, he said simply. Or a reminder that we are always between things. What we were, what we are not yet. She nodded once, not quite knowing why her eyes burned. He set the carving down between them, left it there like a bridge. The next morning, she walked farther. Into the pines, alone, with a bough slung awkwardly over her shoulder. One he had strung for her, silently. She didn't know how to shoot it, but she wore it like a promise. The air had changed. There was something in it, a scent carried on the thawing wind. Pine sap, wet bark, and underneath it all, the faintest trace of smoke that didn't belong to their fire. She froze. Wyapi emerged beside her from behind the trees, silent as ever. She looked at him. He nodded once. Yes, not his fire, not his people. Someone else was near. The weight of the past dropped through her like a stone. John, or what was left of him. She looked at Wyapi, eyes wide and unsure. He saw it all in a glance. The way her shoulders tensed, the way her jaw clenched, the way her breath stopped moving like she wasn't sure she had the right to take another one. He placed a hand on her arm. Just a touch. Steady. Present. You are not what they left. She didn't cry, but she leaned into that hand for just a moment before stepping back. They returned to the shelter and began to prepare. Not in panic. In calm. The wolves had taught her that. There is no need for fear when your breath is steady and your feet know where to go. That night, as the fire burned low, she spoke again. He left me. My husband. When the snow came. Wyapi didn't speak. She didn't need him to. He rode ahead. Never looked back. She ran her fingers over the stitching of the blanket. They thought I died. I think he wanted me to. She looked into the fire. I wasn't useful anymore. I think that's what broke in me first. The wind moaned outside, soft and lonesome. Wyapi stirred the fire once. You are useful to yourself now. The words hit deeper than she expected. She was quiet a long time. Do you think they'll come back? For me? He looked at her. They won't come for you. They'll come for what they thought you were. And what am I now? His gaze didn't waver. Something they don't understand. She watched the coals glow, and something in her chest untangled. In the following days, they tracked the smoke. Small signs at first, a broken branch, a print too wide to be his, a scrap of tobacco paper. Someone was out there, perhaps 2 or 3, maybe hunters, maybe worse. But Eleanor did not tremble anymore. She had worn hunger, worn silence, worn winter, and lived. One morning, she followed a wolf. Not close, just enough to see how it moved through the forest, not with stealth, but purpose. Not with fear, but knowledge. When the wolf turned to look at her, she did not drop her eyes. She nodded. It disappeared into the trees. She smiled for the first time in months. That night, Wyapi handed her a piece of hide and a flint. He showed her how to make fire. It took 3 tries. Then the spark caught. The flame bloomed slowly. She didn't look away. He didn't praise her, only watched. And for the first time, she felt no need for praise. The fire warmed her hands. The next morning, she packed a small satchel. Wyapi watched her fold each item with care. She took only what she needed. She did not speak. Neither did he. But when she stepped into the snow, she paused. Will you follow? He tilted his head slightly. Only if you want me to. She gave the smallest of smiles, then turned and walked into the trees. Alone, but not lost. Behind her, the fire still burned. Not in the shelter. In her. The mountain held its breath as she stepped deeper into it. Eleanor moved through the pine-shadowed hush like a note held just above silence. The satchel against her hip was light. Herbs, flint, the elk bone comb, and a length of braided cord she'd made by firelight. Nothing that tethered her to the woman who had once begged for warmth beneath broken trees. She had left that woman in the snow. The wind was different now, not gentler, but clearer, as if the mountain recognized her gait and no longer whispered warnings. Beneath the hush of snowmelt, she could hear the slow pulse of something ancient in the land. She felt it behind her ribs. The mountain that had nearly killed her did not ask for forgiveness, but it had given her something, a remembering, and memory was power. Behind her, somewhere far but steady, Wyapi followed. Not close, not guiding, a presence that moved like her shadow, only stepping into sight when needed. When her feet hesitated near a frozen creek, he placed a stone across the ice. When her hands trembled while preparing the snare, he said nothing, only sat nearby and waited. His patience had no weight. That was its strength. They didn't speak of what they both knew. That danger was coming. It arrived first as smoke again, thicker this time, and then boot prints near a frozen birch grove. 3 men. One wore a fur-lined coat torn at the hem. Eleanor recognized the stitching. She had sewn it. Her breath caught like a hawk on a wire. John. Still alive. Still in these woods. She felt no fear. Only an old ache. Not for him, but for the girl she had been when she loved him. The one who had confused approval for affection. Dependence for safety. The one who had believed survival meant being chosen. She was not that girl anymore. She watched from a low ridge with Wyapi beside her, cloaked in brush and quiet. Below, the men huddled near their fire. John laughed, loud and careless, passing a flask to a red-faced man who spat and cursed the cold. She leaned closer. Her fingers curled into the frozen earth. They weren't hunting game. They were searching. John's voice rang out. She's alive, I tell you. Some trapper probably got her. Or wolves. Hell, maybe both. But if she's breathing, she's mine. You hear me? Mine. Wyapi did not move, but his stillness shifted, like a bowstring pulled slow and tight. Eleanor didn't flinch. Not this time. She waited until the men slept, 2 snoring, John twitching in half-drunken dreams. Then she stood and turned away from the ridge. Wyapi followed her without question. Back in the pines, she gathered stones. Charcoal, ash, herbs. She built a small circle and set fire to it just before dawn. Not for warmth. For a message. A spiral of smoke climbed into the morning sky. A shape she had learned from watching Wyapi. A signal, not a plea. A warning. The wolves came that night. 6 of them, maybe 7. Ghost-like. Their eyes found hers through the dark. She didn't back away. They stood at the edge of the clearing where she now slept alone, and though they did not move closer, they didn't leave. It was enough. By morning, the men had moved. Closer. She could hear their laughter echoing through the canyons. So she prepared. She laid snares, not for death, for delay. She brushed trails with pine oil and ash, disrupting scent. She whispered prayers she didn't believe into the hollow of trees. And then she waited. When they came, it was sudden. A crash of boots through snow. Yelling. Gunpowder. A shot cracked like a bone splintering. A bird took flight in the distance. She didn't run. She stood, centered between 2 firs, the satchel over her chest, the wind combing her hair back from her face. The cold kissed her cheeks. She felt wide open and wildly calm. John came through first, wild-eyed, rifle in hand. He skidded to a stop at the sight of her, panting, grinning. You're alive. I knew it. I told them. Hell, girl, You're a legend out here now. She said nothing. He stepped forward. Come on now. Let's be sensible. You've had your little wilderness moment. Time to come home. She watched him. This man she once thought strong. He looked smaller now. Not because he had changed, but because she had. There's no home, she said. Not with you. His face twitched. Anger flickered behind his eyes. Don't be foolish. You think you can live out here? Alone? You're not. I already have. Another step forward. Rifle lowering. You'll die without me. She tilted her head slightly. Then I'll die on my feet. Wyapi stepped from the trees then, bow drawn. John froze. The rifle trembled. Behind them, a wolf howled. It was not a threat. It was a song. John stepped back. Just once. The other men appeared behind him, one limping, the other wide-eyed. Their confidence unraveled like thread. This place isn't yours, Wyapi said, voice quiet as snowfall. The men hesitated, then turned. John looked at her one last time. You're making a mistake. She didn't answer. He disappeared into the trees. She let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The snow fell again that night, slow and steady, covering the old prints. She sat by the fire, Wyapi across from her. Neither spoke. There was no need. In the silence, the mountain remembered her. Not as prey, not as wife, but as one who endured. When the wolves returned to the edge of the glade, she stood and walked toward them. Not far, just close enough. The she-wolf looked at her. A long, steady gaze, then turned and vanished into the trees. Eleanor stood for a long moment, the cold forgotten. Wyapi approached from behind, his presence like a second heartbeat. You are not who they think you were. She nodded. Neither are you. He smiled, the first she had seen. Just a flicker. She turned to him. What do we do now? He looked toward the darkened horizon, where the storm had passed but the wind still sang. We walk, until the land calls us to stop. And when it does, then we listen. And so they did. Two souls, not lost, but found. Not saved, reborn. In a land that remembers not your name, but your weight. Your silence. Your fight. The mountain holds them still, in the breath between storms, in the hush of firelight, in the prints they leave behind. Not as prey, not as legend, but as proof. That even in the coldest wild, kindness can bloom slow. But when it does, it roots deep. And it stays. If this story stirred something quiet in you, leave a mark, a like, a comment, or a piece of your own memory. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Until next tale, keep your fire burning slow. And remember, the mountain never forgets.